June 27th at 7 p.m. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Great. Moving on, I will bypass my first Selectmen's updates tonight, just because we've got a lot to talk about tonight. That might take a while. Moving on to liaison reports and Selectmen comments.
Okay, I'll do two things. One, we're going to vote later on. The elementary school building committee has named an architect. We'll be approving the agenda, so they're rocking and rolling.
That's awesome.
Moving it forward, and there's a new thing on the agenda that we've discussed recently. Other boards do this. This is the first time we've done it, and that's the consent agenda. So these are just normal business items that we're lumping in together just to save our time, procedurally. That's all. Fantastic.
Any other?
I'll report on the ARP committee, of which Noreen and I are the Selectmen liaisons. The ARP committee, which is whose mission is to help allocate and distribute the American Rescue Plan monies, held a public hearing within the last 2 weeks and presented the process to the public of how folks can apply to this committee to obtain some funds. So on the town website now, there is both an application form and a description of the application process. And the ARP committee will begin to review the submissions at our first meeting in August. So it will be a continuous rolling admissions process, rolling applications. But those who get their applications in now will find that they start getting reviewed in August.
And I attended the Board of Ed meeting on the 21st of June. A big part of the conversation was around the draft CIP plan. And inside of the CIP plan, which I believe they did vote on and they did approve it, was ADA compliance. So a fair amount of door upgrades that were added into the plan itself. There's also some updates to facilities in there. The synthetic baseball field, the tennis courts, inclusive of lights, and they were very cognizant of the spend, spreading it across multiple years, which I thought was very responsible. They ended the year from a budget standpoint with notionally $14K. We recognize that the year doesn't actually end until the end of June, but they're wrapping up the year with a positive $14K in the books. And then ARP funds were also discussed, and I think they are very eager, Al, to start spending ARP money.
I don't have anything to add.
I know we've met several times in the last 10 days, so it's all a blur, to be honest. Confusing, like what I've updated people on or otherwise. So with that, let's move on to citizens' comments. Do we have any hands raised in the audience?
No one has their hand raised.
Great. Okay. Next item is the consent agenda, and I guess I would like to make a motion to approve the following items: the minutes of June 13th, 2022 special meeting, the minutes of June 14th, 2022 regular meeting, the tax abatements or refunds as recommended by the tax collector's office. Routine line item transfers in the amount of $75,519.15, and the hiring of Jacqueline Leah to the position of executive assistant located within the Selectmen's office.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on the consent agenda? No? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Look at that, Bruce. Look what we just did.
Yeah.
Look what we just did there.
Brilliant suggestion. Item number 6 is discuss and take action to approve a proclamation honoring Valerie Ryan. Get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. Well, just a little background, Valerie had participated in our Memorial Day Parade, and I have a proclamation I'd like to read. She's going to be participating in the Independence Day Parade, and so I thought I could present it to her at the parade. She's also turning 100 in July, so this would be to mark her as a veteran, her 100th birthday as well. Whereas Valerie Ryan has been a resident of Madison for many years, and whereas Valerie Ryan has set a lifelong standard of service, including by enlisting with the Navy's waves, working up from pharmacist mate to chief pharmacist mate during World War II. And whereas Valerie Ryan became a nurse following World War II and worked first at St. Raphael's Hospital and then at Yale New Haven Hospital. And whereas Valerie Ryan then returned to school, earning her BS from Southern Connecticut State University and master's degree and six-year degree in elementary school teaching from the University of Connecticut and spent 18 years teaching third grade in Westbrook. And whereas a Valerie resident enjoyed a vibrant vocation in ballroom dancing, bringing home an astonishing 483rd first place awards during her 20 years of competition. And whereas Valerie Ryan served as the Grand Marshal at Madison Memorial Day Parade. And whereas Valerie Ryan has reached the momentous occasion of her centennial birthday, now therefore we, the members of this board, hereby unanimously name July 24th, 2022 as Valerie Ryan Day in the town of Madison. Done this the 27th day, 2022 in the town of Madison on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
Here, here.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, and we will hopefully all get to meet her. I met her at the Memorial Day Parade, but she's got quite a wonderful history of service, so we're excited to honor her with this. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to approve a fireman's pension plan changes. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. So, little background. We had addressed this several months ago about proposed changes to the fireman's pension plan. It took a while to get the language right, and unfortunately, we didn't get to the board until this afternoon and what the revisions would be to the actual plan. So I think tonight the idea is just to talk through those changes so that the board has time to actually look at the document. And so we've invited Yelena from our pension advisor to kind of just walk through what those changes are going to be in the plan based on, I think the board had learned a kind of big picture what the proposed amendments were going to be. And then what we would do is come back at the July meeting for final discussion and approval of the plan amendments, which would then have to go to Board of Finance and then town meeting approval. And so with that, Yelena, if I could turn it over to you to kind of walk through, the plan amendments being proposed.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So currently, the plan provides a $3,000 per year benefit to somebody who retires at age 60 and a $10,000 per year benefit to somebody who retires at age 65. And that benefit is reduced if they don't have 20 years of service. There's what we call a vesting schedule where they get something less than 100% of that amount if they have less than 20 years of service. What the proposed change does is double those benefit amounts over a 10-year period. So it phases in a doubling of those benefit amounts over 10 years. So at the end of the 10-year period, somebody retiring would receive $6,000 at age 60, or if they stay until age 65, they would receive $10,000 per year. And the same vesting reduction would continue to apply if they don't have 20 years of service. So that's the high level overview of the benefit change.
Can you just highlight for us what the change was though, or if there was any changes based on what we heard the last time?
No, this is
No.
basically what's actually, now it's written into the formal document.
So no change, we're good.
Yeah, so
All right,
it's the proposal is the same as what was presented before.
Said
It's just
changes on
now,
our agenda. So.
yeah, well, no, it's saying the changes to the pension plan, because we talked about high level, what they're requesting. We talked high level about what the proposed changes would be. Now it's actually in a formal document, because the board has to vote to amend the plan. And so the document that I circulated, when I had hoped to get this last week to you, we unfortunately didn't for a number of reasons. And so I would ask that, we would just table any vote and then have the vote in July. And I think it would be also helpful in July is Stacy can walk through what this means from a budgetary standpoint and some solutions that we're looking at that would allow us to fund this over the next couple of years. So, so I don't know, you know, if we want to have a longer discussion tonight or anything specific to pension advisor tonight, or just table this for the, you know, July meeting.
So I'm going to be table this to the July meeting.
I'll second that.
All right, so I guess we vote on that then, right? Do we vote on tabling? No, we don't.
I don't think you have to,
Okay.
but let's do it just for.
Okay, all in favor of tabling this to the July meeting? Say
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Elaine, we'll see, I'll poll the board before the July meeting to see if we're gonna need any further advice from you or.
Okay.
What
No
this.
problem.
I appreciate you. And we just weren't quite ready to dig into it. They haven't had a chance to really review the document yet.
No
Okay.
problem.
Great.
Right.
Okay.
Take
All
care.
right, sorry, guys. So with that, then that will be on the July, for action, the July meeting, which I think is the 24th, July 24th. Item number 8, discuss and take action to approve the application for an Urban Act funding grant in the amount of $150,000 for the American Legion Griswold Post 79 renovation project, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all documents and contracts in conjunction with this grant.
So moving.
Second.
So, in this, this is actually on behalf of, we're gonna be a pass-through entity on this. This is an additional town money. The town is really just gonna be a conduit to get this grant funding that was approved, under the bonding commission for the American Legion for the second phase of their project. So, and I don't know, Lauren, if you just wanna talk about, because I think the stuff you had in there was just we have to now do they were awarded it, similar to like what happened with Academy. Now we have to actually go through the paperwork of submitting the application and then
Yeah.
and then sending the money. But you talk to the state, right? So we're just a pass-through entity, basically.
Yes. So basically what they've done is they've earmarked the money for us, and now we have to make it the official application. But for this particular grant, we will just be the pass-through entity. So it'll be very similar to how we run the CDBG grant for Concord Meadows, where the Legion will be responsible for all the contracting with vendors, and then they will just tell us what bills that they've incurred. We will ask the state to fund that money to reimburse what we're.
Strategic view.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. I can't hear them because I have earbuds in, but I'm like, wait, I think you could all hear Jack.
It's all good.
So yeah, so this is all this was announced. I think you saw this is for their expansion project, and it's not, no town funds are going to be included as part of this project. So, any other questions from board members on? No? Okay. All in favor of approving item 8, say aye. Aye. Okay, motion passes.
Peggy, may I just add too, we should remark that the American Legion really raised money, did the whole outside on their own, just raising, I think they raised over $200,000. And now they have a chance to do the inside, and I think it's great.
Yeah, no, it's a great project, and it's perfect because they finished the exterior, as you said, and now they're having an opportunity to do the upgrades. So, all right, item number 9, discuss and take action to approve the town inclusion into an application for a sustainable materials management grant led by the South Central Regional Council of Governments, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all documents and contracts in conjunction with this grant.
So move.
Second.
Okay, great. So this is actually what we've been working a lot on a regional basis about reducing waste. There's a big looming deadline of the Mira waste facility that's going to be closing. I think it's next year. And so towns across all of Connecticut are going to be struggling with where do we ship our garbage, basically. And so one of the ways to help address this issue is to try to remove as many things as we can out of the waste stream. And one of the largest things in the waste stream that we can control is food waste diversion. And so there's been some programs in the state that other towns have done where you experiment with having home pickup of food waste. And so we applied for this grant to run a pilot program in Madison that would allow residents to sign up for home pickup of both their trash, regular trash waste, plus their food waste scraps. And so the truck would come and there'd be regular garbage, recycling, and there'd be a separate third thing now that would be for food waste. And this one company, which has been doing this in other communities, would then take it to, they have the ability to go to a facility that has, where they can transfer the food waste into an anaerobic digester that converts the food waste into energy. So it's a really impressive thing, and we've been kind of working this for the last 2 years. Because we're private hauler served in Madison, it's a little different, like communities that have municipal waste where they, as part of their town services, it's a little easier to kind of figure out how to manage this. So this was a way to kind of allow us as a private hauler community to try out this type of service. So we're supposed to be hearing soon whether or not we'll receive this grant. I think it's a great opportunity to try something. Eventually, I think over time, we're gonna start going to pay per use, which is something that, or pay per throw, but basically you have to pay for how much garbage you throw out versus these flat fees, which is what we in our community currently pays. So this is kind of, and that means it incentivizes people to separate a lot more. So you're only paying for true garbage, versus like non-recyclable materials and food. So this is kind of a step towards experimenting with that type of service pickup. It doesn't cost the town anything. And there's a model where the residents get subsidies to buy these separate bags for food waste. So that's a long discussion because I think this is a great topic. At one point I want to come back and talk to the board because it's going to be a big problem for towns going forward dealing with this issue. But this is a grant, and once again, it's really just giving residents a subsidy to sign on to the service. So any other questions?
So it'd be basically like a pilot program.
Yeah, it is. It'd be for 1 year only, and then the town and resident, if there's a lot of, then the private hauler might see that there's a lot of appetite and want to roll it out across the entire community. But this at least allows, the role we're playing is just monitoring it, I think. And we got to figure out exactly what the town will be doing, but we're not picking up the garbage. We're not involved in that part of it. So, any other questions?
Nope.
All right, all in favor on item number 9, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great, okay. So item number 10 is discuss and take action to approve accepting a supplemental certified local government grant in the amount of $8,500 as requested by the Old Elm Street Historic District Committee, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all documents and contracts in conjunction with this grant pending board of finance approval.
Absolutely. Second.
Okay, this is, I think, a recurring, Lauren, don't we go for this? I'm trying to remember this grant.
I'm gonna move Erin in because
Okay.
Erin is who actually helped them apply for it.
Yeah, but I think they get this, they've done this before, we've done these before, I'm trying to remember what this one was.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
This was an application that was initiated through the Historic District Commission, through their Old Elm Street subcommittee, where they're looking to do a study of the properties, basically to include new properties in the Old Elm Street Historic District. So this is an inventory study of these properties along the Post Road, so that they can be included on the state and national registers of historic places. So it was really the Historic District Commission who put this application together. They initially were going to have a match from the Historical Society of $4,000. And in speaking with Mary Dunn of SHPO, she had recommended the Historic Preservation Enhancement Grant application, where the state would fund the entire study. So we would not need those $4,000 from the Historical Society. So that was wonderful. So they've granted the full amount, and this is our first application as a certified local government that we've been awarded from SHPO. So.
Okay. Pretty straightforward, I think. Any other questions for Erin? All right, all in favor of approving item number 11, say aye.
Aye.
Or item 10, excuse me. All right, motion
Thank
passed.
you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Great, thanks, Aaron.
Take care.
Item number 11, discuss and take action to approve awarding the contract for the Madison Downtown Center Utility Project to the lowest bidder, A&S Electrical Services.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so Rob, if you just want to spend a minute, kind of what this project entails.
Sure.
You may make a lot of people happy too, though.
So basically what this project is purely infrastructure. It's building out the remaining infrastructure that was not completed as part of the original first phase of the project. So the first project was the streetscape from, it wound up being split basically from the firehouse to Wall Street. Within that project, there was strategically placing underground infrastructure throughout town. And that was installed as part of that. And there's a number of properties, 4, I believe, as a part of this, that need some underground electric and telecommunication infrastructure in order to remove the poles. And this project remedies sort of those voids. And that's what this will entail.
So I think the one thing is that this phase of phase 2 came out a little bit more than the original estimates that had been provided, because these were put together in the fall of 2020, if you recall, when we came forward with the budget to the full piece. And I guess a lot of that has to do with conduit prices have gone through the roof. So just want to keep a heads up that as we move forward, we're covered right now in CIP on this, but once this this piece gets done, then there's another piece that needs to get done that we would go out to bid for, and that's where we might bump into possibly needing some additional funds. Because I think your estimate, we're not sure how this is going to come out. The other thing is we did have a meeting with Eversource in March, and they did once again reconfirm that they will pick up the tab for the pole piece of this, which is, maybe a $15,000 piece, but that might help offset some of the project overruns that we might see during this process. So I just want to kind of plant that flag that we might have to get, because costs have just gone, electrical work has really gotten expensive with supply chain issues now. So that's kind of it.
May I ask a question, Peggy? I'm glad Eversource has stepped up, even though it's a little bit of money really, but it's something. Does this mean that the easements are pretty settled? That part is done or close to being done?
They are. What's interesting is the problematic easement that we've had on the north side of the street. Right. We have come to an agreement with the Rattan and Associates on the easement map, the planting agreements and the site agreement. So everything has been agreed to in terms. What we just discovered, we cannot file the easement until all the properties on the easement. For some reason, this was set up that you needed to have all the properties at the same time when you record the easement. Last year, we got an easement agreement signed with a property owner. Since then, that person has refinanced their property. So we just realized we have to go back to this other property owner. So we're anticipating being able to file this by the end of July, because now we got to go back to a property owner who had already signed their easement agreement and ask them to sign a new one, because they signed it and then they did a refinancing, and so we have to go back and get an additional signature on that. But I just got notified today that the planting agreement, which is one of the final agreements with Rotan, has been agreed to now.
Well, Peggy, this is excellent news. It's good to hear. This change we have to make, is that being pushed by Eversource, or who's requiring this?
The change in terms
as far as having to go back and redo some of the easements.
Oh, it's just you can't. It's a requirement, because it's when you record. I mean, I guess the attorneys can explain it more, but you can't record this easement without having permission from the lender, because so last year the property owner actually paid off the mortgage. He said, "Don't worry about it. I'll just pay the mortgage off and then I'll sign it." He signed it, and then he went out and got another mortgage 6 months later. We found this out. But he thought we were wrapping it all up then, but then we had continual discussions and it went on a little bit longer. So the way the project is structured, we're starting with the south side first anyways, so we have some time to kind of finalize the documentation stuff on the north side. So that's kind of where we are. And, you know, this will go out, I guess, they'll start work in July, right?
Yeah, I think
And the public's not gonna see that necessarily, because this is not poles coming down, this is infrastructure work.
no, so this will take place predominantly on the backside of Sampson Rock Drive. So you won't, anyone on Route 1 won't really see the work, and a lot of it will be outside of the town right of way. And it's scheduled to start pending all the necessary documentation coming in from the contractor on July 11th. And is anticipated to go to mid-August, and should be all completed.
Will the public experience any traffic issues?
No, I just, a lot of this is taking, again, outside the right of way. You know, we'll find staging areas that are outside of any public disruption or anything like that. This is not like the downtown center project per se.
Well, and then I think you know, the more visual phase though, with the actual poles coming down, that would be the fall, right?
I'm not sure, I think that we need to see how this goes, and then we'll make sure that everything works out, and then preparing for really what the next phase is getting all the electricians, whether it's one or multiple, whoever's actually gonna be doing the cutovers to each independent building, getting that all lined up. And that'll have to, all those cutovers to each independent property, will have to happen before the poles can come down.
And I will say that some of this is complicated because you have, for example, a bank that can't lose power while you're doing this work, so you have to set up, and then you have some apartment units, you know, so you have to have backup generators coming in, so it is a more complicated thing, so that's why we have to stage it appropriately. But the stuff that Rob is talking about is more laying the groundwork so you can get to the point where you're hooking it up to the actual businesses.
Yeah, I think this is the most important step, is to finish the infrastructure. So now everything that's needed to pull all the wires is in the ground. Again, we're just a few properties short. It just wasn't completed as part of that first phase, and this will sort of close that gap, and we'll be, you know, in a better position to start pulling wires and converting properties over to underground power.
Which I know I get a lot of questions about this from constituents, so I mean, this is, I think this is super news. And I think people are gonna be really happy, so I appreciate the update.
Yeah, we need to review the source of funds for this particular
It's in CIP, isn't it?
I think it's in CIP, and so what we may do is put in a request for this next year for more money in year one, because it just depends on how, we have enough to cover this piece right now that we're approving, but then I think it's gonna be some of the additional work because the pricing has just gone up on this.
Yeah, there's a number of factors, and even speaking with different contractors, I mean, the cost of conduit has gone from this is just from people I've spoken with, $160 per 100 feet to $760 per 100 feet.
Wow.
Then from 2020, where the average fuel cost was $2.17, the average fuel cost now is $4.89. Labor rates have gone up, cost of concrete structures, which there is a number in this project, and asphalt has gone up due to oil prices. And then also the type of construction this project, you know, a lot of it's gonna be hand dug in tight between buildings where you can't fit machinery. So that's a little bit more time and effort intensive. So there's a few reasons why it's the preliminary estimate in 2020, that it's a little bit higher, and you may have that come up again in the next portion when we start changing some of the meters and doing the connections at the buildings. So it's really a product of the times, but we don't agree it has to be completed.
So we'll to be continued, I think, in CIP about pulling some additional funds forward if we have to. We'll just see where we are in the project in the fall and then make some estimates for the rest of it. Okay, so
Nobody had voted yet. We gotta vote.
no, all in favor of approving item 11, say aye.
Aye.
All right, great, thanks Robin, he has done excellent work on this, keeping it forward, and appreciate all the hard work on it.
Thank you all very much, have a good night.
See you, Rob.
Thanks, easy, see you soon.
So item number 12 is discuss and take action to approve awarding the contract for the architect of the new elementary school building project to Tecton Architects, subject to reducing professional liability insurance from $10 million to $5 million.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, and so who do we have
we
here?
have Billy
for
here.
this?
You see Billy?
See that? See Brown, who is the chair of the building committee, and
Chuck.
and we have our owner's rep from Colliers and Bill Lippman. So I'll let you just spend a second on the process and everything, and we're so excited to see this keep going.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. It's hard to follow the eliminating the potential elimination of polls on Boston Post Road. So kind of stole our thunder. But so we've been working on a pretty tight schedule that you tasked us with to get this thing moving forward. So the first step was hiring an architect. So we, Bill and colleagues were very helpful getting that teed up for us before then. So we went through a qualification-based selection process for the architects. We had a great deal of interest. It's a very interesting project and exciting project for architects. So we had a great deal of interest. We went through actually a 3-step shortlisting process. We went from the initial batch to 8, did a screen to 4, had them submit proposals, and came in for interviews on the 13th and 16th. We listened to the pricing, which I think was in your package, was pretty much all in line, and it was under the budget that we had. So we're very happy for that. After the presentations, the committee voted unanimously to recommend we move forward with Tecton pending your approval, pending some negotiating some final things. So we're very excited about getting them going. The next step will be hiring the CM and starting work on the schematic design. One thing that that we want to discuss briefly is the amount of professional liability insurance that was recommended. I think the original, we got some recommendation for $10 million. After talking to all the architects, that was beyond what they would typically carry for a job that size. $5 million is more than covers what typically is done. I talked to the person a friend of mine writes mostly the liability insurance in Connecticut, and he said $5 million is even on the high range for that, and so we'd recommend cutting 10 to 5. The reason we mentioned that is because all the architects identified that was a premium cost to the project to get that additional rider, and Tecton was $185,000, which I don't think is necessary based on everything we've heard and from everyone. So we'd like to recommend that because that was not included in their base fee. But pending that, we're thrilled to recommend moving forward with Tecton. So I don't know, Bill, if you want to say anything else, Bill?
Yes, Lauren and I did follow up with the insurance consultant. There was 2, Kerma and our consultant. We did go talk at length about the $10 million versus less. And if I can remember correctly, he said projects in the 50 million, that's what they like to see. This project is actually only 42 million is the construction. So, we didn't get into the nitty gritty. Absolutely. It's our choice, the town's choice to do this. I don't know if Lauren has anything to add, but I'm supporting the lowering to 5 million. But I'd like to hear if Lauren has any concerns or issues.
No, I'm okay with the change.
Thank you, Lauren. I didn't get a chance to ask you. Yeah, we had a lengthy conversation with the insurance agent. It's totally the board's, protocol.
So just so I understand, the town sees the savings from this, right? Ultimately,
Yes.
Through the bid, the way it was.
Yes, the town's going to save $185,000 if we don't require the 10 million versus the 5 million.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Significant.
Yes.
I think if our risk manager is comfortable, Kerma, if it's in line with Kerma and it's under the $50 million threshold, it sounds like that we should be good. Any other concerns?
Well, the only way that the motion is worded, it's subject to reducing. So does that just mean we need to wait till they physically do it?
So I think we have to change the terms. I think originally we set it at 10, and so now we need to reduce it. I think just voting affirmatively on this motion,
We're good.
improves Tecton and reduces the
I
liability.
just want to make sure the word subject wasn't still conflicting with our direction here.
Lauren, do you have a different take on that?
No, I think you can approve the motion as is.
Okay.
So, but this is a contract that I sign, right?
That is correct.
So I'm just curious, because sometimes we have the language in here saying, authorizing me to sign.
I think it's understood, but I don't think anybody's against that.
No, okay. No, I don't need to add it. I'm just kind of trying to figure out the nuances between the way we do it for different things. But this is actually, okay. I'm fine with it, so. All right, is everybody ready to vote?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor of awarding the contract in item 12, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes and.
Doreen,
Noreen, do we get a vote? Noreen?
She voted in favor. I can hear her.
You
Yeah.
can? Okay. I couldn't hear her.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
I don't know.
I did vote in favor.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, great, thank you. So,
Would
item
you like
number,
any kind of update or you want any information?
want to move up, we can do item number 13 quickly, and then do we want to move up the charter discussion prior to the executive session?
I would, yeah.
Okay, so let's do number 13 first. Discuss town options regarding additional security personnel. So I wanted to include Chief Drum in this conversation. So Lauren, so basically, obviously with some of the unfortunate shootings that have occurred, there's been a lot of internal discussion about security improvements, both the school district, but also just generally. Town actually went through its own Alice drill recently, active shooter drill, so we're trying to make sure we all understand policies, procedures, good best practices in terms of protecting ourselves. But in part of the discussion with the school district, some ideas had come up of what other towns have been looking at doing. And so I just wanted to brief you. We might be bringing some more specific and targeted ideas to this board that would require action by us. And so Jack, if you want to spend just a few minutes of some of the ideas that we're contemplating.
Okay, can you hear me, you folks?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Well, currently in the state of Connecticut, you have 14 school systems that are soliciting for advertising for armed police officers within the school system. We've had an initial discussion on it. We talked about what would be the best way and also a financially possible way to put additional officers in the schools. And one of the ideas that came up is that some of the schools were going to armed security, which they're allowed by state statute. Some report to the chief of police, some report to the superintendent of schools. So we wanted to get this on the table, at least for a discussion. Now, one of the ideas was that we use former Madison officers if they had the interest in working post-retirement, because one of the criteria that the state asks is that they be former police officers left in good standing who maintain certain standards post-retirement. With that, one of them is a federal act which allows them to carry a firearm provided they qualify annually. We have probably half dozen officers that do that in the town of Madison. But I don't know if we want to just restrict it to former Madison officers. Maybe we probably have to fulfill it, open it up probably statewide, but the same criteria, obviously certified officers that meet the criteria and most certainly the training. So it's just an open discussion right now is how can we best do this? I think we'd like to see this, at least in the discussions I've had with some folks in town and some people at the boards, is that they'd like to see it with the upcoming school year. So that means we're going to have to start the discussion sooner than later.
I know it came up, Jack, at the Board of Ed meeting. The superintendent mentioned this particular concept as interesting and was briefing his board on it, so.
And it's something, what I can do is there are some other communities that have this in place that would require some certain ordinance passed by the Board of Selectmen, so we could look at some possible options for that. I could work with Jack and then we would, it is going to be a budget issue if we were trying to get this in place, obviously by September. They do not have a budget for additional personnel outside of what they had budgeted for last year. So would have to, I mean, there's the, enabling us to have this type of security service is one thing. The other thing is if we're gonna get it in place by September, there's gonna have to be some funds that the board would have to be supportive of providing through special appropriation, possibly.
Is that town funds or Board of Ed funds though? Or is that-
Town funds first.
Town funds first, because it's not in the budget, so.
Does the Board of Ed had to actually make a request for these individuals or for the positions? Or are we just, in other words, are we just anticipating that there is a request coming?
I would say we're kind of anticipating that there would be a request coming. I think to set this up the way Jack is talking is really an ordinance that would be by the Board of Selectmen. So we could still do the ordinance, it just enables us to offer this, but then there would be the process of the school district authorizing this. I guess, but this would not be under the purview of the Board of Education, right? They're not employees of the Board of Education, who would they be employees of, Jack?
That would be part of the discussion. I mean, there's some applications in the state where they use a security company with armed within the school system. Fairfield does that. There's some that make them employees of the Board of Ed with the statutes that apply post Newtown, which allow them to do that. There's some that have them as supernumeraries or part-time officers within the police department. That's something that North Haven does. The conundrum for us is examples. We have like Tommy Bull works for us as an SRO. Tommy retired, but he's limited in how many hours he can work within the school district because he's a former town employee retired. So he can't give them 40 hours a week unless we had some sort of caveat or change to the statute that allowed him. That's what North Haven did because they had a lot of folks, former North Haven officers that wanted to work within the schools. Tommy is a very successful officer within the schools and they really, really admired him. So I would have an interest in having Tom extend his hours, but statutorily with the pension, we cannot.
So I guess though, Bruce, maybe just thinking your question is you would rather have the school district request that they want the security coverage and then we figure out how to give it to them.
I'm happy running parallel path
Yeah.
on this. I would just hate to run parallel path only to find out that the district says, we're not interested in this. We don't want this.
I heard pretty loud and clear they want it, but I take your point, though. I think it might be nice just to have representation from superintendent.
So if we expect that request is coming, then we can move forward with that expectation. I was just trying to understand that. And from a funding perspective, Stacy, you can tell me where I go off the rails here, but the school district has its lump of money and they are free to do with that lump of money whatever they want. And so if they needed to act faster than the town could act, they could spend some of their funds on this as a line item. And then we would have to backfill whatever hole that created in their budget at a later date.
There's a lot of considerations here that we obviously have to be discussed. Number one, I don't think we're ever going to be able to put police officers in every school. I don't see us getting that number. I think the cost it's going to cost us a lot to do that. And then to have what's paramount is that we put the right person in that seat at the school. Somebody dedicated that wants to work within that environment and become a dedicated SRO program. That's not that easy. So these are discussions obviously have to take place between the various boards, but that's on the horizon. It's going to be here sooner than you think. I mean, we're getting out of school. They're out of school now, but they'll be back to school within what, 8, 9 weeks, 10 weeks?
We just start looking at draft ordinances or something from
Yeah,
other
I mean, I
towns.
think that's, we've started that a little bit. I think also putting a budget around that. And then I think some conversations have to be had is who's gonna like own these people, right? You know? In terms of, I don't know what the best route is right now, and that's something we have to figure out. So maybe we have a working group, Jack, with the schools, and we figure out with the superintendent, figuring out what a recommendation would be. And then bring it back to the board.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to hear, but it just seems intuitively, we already have a management organization built to handle police officers, public safety officers. Recreating that over on the school system, I'm not sure adds a lot of
Or
value
in the
to
town.
us.
Yeah.
You know, we might as well leverage the existing management
Yeah.
system that we've got.
I mean,
That's the way I see it at first blush anyways.
I mean, I think that that's where this ordinance, would be the most suitable for that type of thing, and that's what Jack had raised it to my attention. And, you know, to be honest, it doesn't have to just be for the schools either, it could be, you know, for the beaches, or for, you know, it's something that we can think about, you know, how it would work, how we would structure it. And,
Maybe it's drafted where it's not specific to a school.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little more open-ended, so that we have the flexibility to add the security as needed.
So I think that we have to do some more research on this, and then I would agree, like, I would think that if I were the school district, I wouldn't want my own, you know, I know that Vivaldi, they have their own district police and stuff. I would guess that that's not what our Board of Ed would be wanting to do, exactly, because they're not the experts, it's another management burden for them. So, you know, but they do use outside security services for the school. So they do actually contract out to an outside security, but it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So, you know, this would be far more cost effective, I think, for us to give them some additional security support. So I'm thinking that maybe we, Jack, you and I sit down in a more detailed fashion and come up with what we think might be with the superintendent, and come up with, and obviously consult with the Board of Ed on this, and come up with what we think the best path forward is. Does that make sense?
Well, Stephanie, but we need the Board of Ed and the school and the superintendent to tell us the direction they want to take, you know, and sooner than later.
I think they have to do so.
Yeah.
Ask them.
I think the conversations that I had, they were clearly supportive of the direction of going through the piece, but that was a couple weeks ago, so I don't know if they've had like a lot of other
No, and
conversations.
he even mentioned too, not having one in every single school, that
Right.
was not realistic. So I think they're thinking about it, Jack, for sure.
And I think the reality is that we're gonna have a reduced footprint when the new school plan goes into effect 2 years from now anyway, so it'll be more concentrated.
May I just add, Jack, I understand what Scott just said, and Jackie, you said it too about every school, but now that we're going to be in the future down to 2 campuses, does that give us more opportunity?
Yes.
Because that should be a help, that the schools are so close together.
It's going to be easier to manage once both campuses are constructed. I think you're probably looking at maybe up to 4 officers. We had 2 already. Adding 2 officers or 2 security to supplement them armed. So we essentially have in every school that at that time, when that's completed, an officer armed within the school property.
Thanks.
Okay, well, we'll come back in our July meeting and maybe have something more refined. And we'll have some, Jack and I can talk more to the superintendent and the Board of Ed chair about how this would work. And then we have a better sense of dollar figures also, and what this would cost and how it would be funded. Okay?
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess why don't we open to citizens' comments, and then, or actually, do we want to make a motion to amend the agenda to move item 16 to item 14A?
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, I always forget this, we have to just to amend it, we just vote on it.
Yeah, we're not
All in
opening the
favor,
agenda.
yeah. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great, so we'll do the charter first and then go to an executive session at the end. So real quick, we'll do citizens' comments. So if people are here for the charter, I know Board of Finance members are on, so we're gonna do the charter next. And right now we'll do any citizens' comments. Any hands raised, Lauren?
There are none.
Okay, great, all right, so with that, we'll move on to item number 14A, which is discuss charter draft document and possible action to approve final draft. So I think Carrie is joined us, right? Carrie is our town council, and we've now asked her to also, she's been assisting us with the draft proposed by the Charter Commission. And our board has had 2 or 3 other meetings to talk about our thoughts, and a lot of, I think, really good dialogue about the draft, and we've made some amendments in those discussions, just proposed amendments. And I think the draft, we did send out that draft to Board of Finance as well, since some of those changes involve the Board of Finance. And so I thought tonight, if first of all, we can just have a board member discussion. If you had a chance to see the latest draft that reflected our conversations from Thursday, I don't know if there was anything that was missed, or you wanted to ask Carrie a question just for Board of Selectmen members right now and our changes are in yellow in the draft that you received. And Carrie, welcome.
Sorry, I was on the phone with Joe, who's joining us tonight, and I'll introduce him later. I apologize, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think tonight was really just following, thank you for kind of pulling this all together, and it's a lot of, edits and changes, and so I just wanted to let my board, first of all, if you had a chance to read Carrie's attempt to capture our conversation. So we did some wordsmithing together, great, I know, but I mean, I went through it and I thought generally it reflected, our conversations. I think you did a pretty good job capturing it. And so I don't know if any of the board members have questions on the yellow.
That doesn't go through as yellow on mine, but that's okay. No, I agree. I think that it's a pretty good capture of it. We talked a lot about clarifying the role of the elected selectmen and the first select person, and I think we captured that in here pretty good. It is our intention to exercise our oversight role through policies that will govern how the town is run, and pull them out of the charter, so to speak. So I think that's a good move. It gives us a lot of flexibility.
I think this pretty much really did capture just clarification. I think once again trying to make things clearer so that no matter who's sitting in these seats or reading this document is not trying to figure out what it means and try to make it clear in terms of roles and responsibilities. And I think that the changes that since the Charter Commission was just clearly that, and it was because we've been living and breathing with this document, so we could weigh in a little more specifically where there's been perhaps disagreements about meaning or just lack of understanding of what the intent was. So that's why we did perhaps a little bit more cleaning up in the Board of Selectmen and First Selectmen sections. And I think on the Board of Finance, the only really, I wouldn't even say it's really we added anything, we just are requiring the Board of Finance to consult with the Board of Selectmen before making additions or reductions. I know Fillmore had raised this at the earlier thing, but it still is clear that the Board of Finance is the final authority on the budget. So this was just to make sure that step is taken for additions or reductions with the town budget. And we also, and this is I had requested, is to make sure that people understand that the Board of Finance does have line item authority in the budget, because it does not have line item authority in the education budget, but it does have it in the town budget, and that's through state statute. But I thought it was important to put that into this document because that question comes up a lot during budget seasons by either staff or members of the public or members of the different boards if they're new to the board. So that was something that we had some clarifying language in there. And we talked a lot about CIP, and really all we did is just make sure this identifies the Board of Selectmen as part of the CIP process, and that we are the strategic planning, really, we are responsible for the strategic planning of the town. So we thought it was important to talk about the Board of Selectmen as part of the CIP process. And so there was just, I think, some language added to that, clarifying that we play a role in that process. And that was kind of it. A lot of this was more, little nits and gnats, and some questions came up. So any other board member comments before I invite in some Board of Finance members?
May we just clarify one thing? We have in here that the Board of Ed hasn't been taken, the Board of Ed budget has not been taken totally out of under the Board of Selectmen, correct? Of what we have here, or has it been? I'm not talking about line item, I'm talking about bottom line. Because I think we heard it's told to us today by the committee that is changed, and that's against state law, that the Board of Selectmen would have be able to interject anything on the bottom line. Is that what I?
The only thing we changed, well, we didn't do this was just the committee had changed.
Right.
That's in item 4.1.3 E, is that we don't have responsibility for compiling, reviewing, and recommending changes to the various departments of the Board of Ed budget. Like, we're not gonna go in and say, hey, the reading department shouldn't buy so many books, right? So we just took it out in terms of one of the rules of the Board of Selectmen.
Well, I totally understand that. That's always been that way. But I remember in the past, years ago, the Board of Selectmen, due to certain circumstances, would change the bottom line of the Board of Ed budget. That is no longer allowed. Is that what we're hearing?
No, Noreen, hi, it's Carrie, for the record. No, you and the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance always have the ultimate decision on the total Board of Ed budget, the bottom line number. What you do not have authority to do is to pick and choose how that money will be spent.
Right, and Carrie, it's always been that, so nothing's changed with that.
Right. I just want to be clear.
Yeah, I misunderstood something. I thought all of a sudden the law had changed about the bottom line.
Nope, you still have control over the bottom line.
Okay, thank you.
Noreen, I agree with you. I was I read the same, I was confused the same way as I read it. So it wasn't just you. So thank you for clarifying that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance still have the ability to make a change at the gross level at the bottom line.
Madam Chair, if I may, if it seems unclear,
Drill down into
can we turn to that section and just make sure, because I do think that's a very important issue. Maybe we could turn to that section and just see where the confusion lie, because
we had just, I was on the charter review, Joan Walker, and we had been advised that the Board of Ed should be removed from that piece and that the Board of Selectmen should only focus on the town. So if that is in error, not an issue.
Well, so once again, though, let me just, first of all, step back. My understanding is where this controversy comes from, and maybe I'm not reading you correctly, is if you go to 4.13, which is on page 10 of the markup, and you go to letter E, that's where there was taking out including the Board of Education, because that was talking about the detailed budgets. If you go to the appropriation section, it specifically says the Board of Education budget and aggregate is part of what can be, but it can't be line item, it can be aggregate. So that's where I don't have that exactly to hand. But the section that talks about the voting on the budgets.
And there shouldn't be anything to change, Peggy. I mean, that's been the way we've been operating for decades.
Yeah, well, let's just make sure the language is
accurate. Yeah, Noreen, I'm just trying to respect the fact that you read it and got confused by it, and as well as Mr. I'm sorry.
McPherson.
You're all squished down now. I can't see your names, but I do think that it's important that if there is confusion, that it be resolved. I mean, you don't want to go through this process and have any questions. The whole point of this was to make sure that the charter was clearer, not more confusing. So, are you satisfied with
Well, which letter, is Peggy talking E? Is that what she's talking?
Yeah, E is the only area that there, I think that's where people were saying.
Under our responsibilities.
Yeah, under our responsibilities. We don't do detailed reviews of the various departments of the budgets of the Board of Ed. That's not, we don't compile.
Right. No, we've never done that.
Yeah.
But because that's a plural budget, is that's how we're supposed to know that we responsible for obtaining, compiling, reviewing, and recommending changes to the budgets of various departments of the town. That's just the town. And then, and for presenting all budgets to the Board of Finance. So where does it say we have bottom line power?
I think it was in a different section.
What section?
Somebody have it, give the number.
So there's the under the Board
appropriations.
of Finance, what is it?
It doesn't, because the appropriation is Board of Finance piece.
Right.
There you go.
So we could, but so what we could, so we recommend budgets to the Board of Finance, right? So so we don't actually, do we say anywhere that we recommend the town and the education budgets to the Board of Finance?
No, I think the way it's written, it hasn't been changed from before, it is always the Board of Finance that had that budget oversight of the bottom line of the Board of Ed. The Board of Selectmen have oversight on the capital side of the Board of Education budget. Because they're capital projects.
It's in the CIP.
Right.
You also have the ability to recommend the bottom line. Doesn't mean it's gonna fly, but you have the ability to say, they want, 50 million, we're recommending 48. Right?
And we've always had that power, and I know years past it was insurance issue. I voted on 15 budgets. I voted to change the bottom line of the Board of Ed twice. One on a change in insurance policy that the superintendent recommended to us when we already had the budget in hand. So it has been a Board of Selectmen job when they present the budgets to the Board of Finance. They've reviewed the Board of Ed and they're allowed to change the bottom line. That's the way it's always been. It just didn't realize it was nowhere in the charter.
Right. So I just want to clarify why this was removed.
Make me comfortable though, guys. If it's not clear and if it's not in the charter, then
so I
don't think it matters what historically we did. It either has to be in the charter or not in the charter, or in a policy.
So what it says is the Board
But if
of
we
Finance-
want it, we should put it in the charter.
That's my point.
But it is. The Board of Finance shall hold a public hearing at which the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education shall present their budget recommendations.
There you go.
What does that say? So we're having a public meeting. That's all that says, Bruce. What else does that say? I'm missing the point.
What it means is consistent with what we've always done. The Board of Ed presents their budget to the Board of Finance. They don't present their budget to the Board of Ed, to the Selectmen, and I don't think they ever really have.
They have.
No, we've received it.
With the Board of Finance.
Way back when they did.
It's joint usually, it's a presentation to both boards. But I'm just stepping back saying, under the Board of Selectmen, we don't specifically say, or under the first Selectman, the first Selectman prepares a budget and collaborates with the Board of Selectmen and recommends a budget. We don't say that anywhere here, actually. That's our process, right? That's our budget workshop schedule and all that we vote on every year. But we don't actually say in here that the Board of Selectmen recommends a budget under our own responsibilities. It's in the Board of Finance section, isn't it? Unless I'm missing it.
Meaning we recommend it to the Board of Finance.
Right, to the Board of Finance. So we don't actually say under the powers.
It's like our transmittal almost.
Unless I'm just totally missing this.
Well, I'm just going by the conditions of what we've been doing for 25 years.
Yeah, but somebody would, but the point being, I think it's a fair point. Somebody coming in here would say, well, it doesn't say anywhere under your duties that you're recommending a budget to the Board of Finance. It doesn't say that under your duties.
Yeah, let's just
Well,
make it.
it's so under our general duties, it says be responsible for obtaining, compiling, reviewing, and recommending changes to the budgets of various departments of the town, and for presenting all budgets to the Board of Finance with its
I
recommendations.
think that's completely
I
clear.
just read this too. How did I not like?
So that's-
I think
so
that's
that's-
completely
yeah.
clear.
That's on
For
page
the
10.
town.
Yeah.
But it doesn't refer to, and we could add, just say, and recommending an aggregate budget on the Board of Education.
Well, I don't think that, to be honest with you, and I respect what your I believe it's Joan Walker from your Charter Revision Commission.
Yep.
Said, they weren't intending to take away anything from you. They were intending to because I think they were worried that including the Board of Education meant it was giving you greater authority than the general statutes allowed. But I still say be responsible for obtaining, compiling, reviewing, and recommending changes to the budgets of the various departments of the town, including the Board of Ed, and for presenting those budgets to the Board of Finance with your recommendations is totally consistent under the law, as long as you don't try to change line items in the Board of Ed budget. And it's not saying that you have the right to do that.
Well,
So just, so
we
could,
covered it. Let me just say though, we covered this in the other section by using the term aggregate budget of the Board of Education. So to just clarify, it's the total budget and it's not specific.
But Peggy, one of the reasons we never had to do that was it's state law. It's state law that we can't go into any line item. And so a lot of,
I'm just saying,
follow
it's
state
trying
law.
to be as clear as possible to make sure that any volunteers who come in have clarity in the charter. Do we want to make sure that when we're talking about the Board of Education budget, it's the aggregate budget, it's not the detailed budget?
So,
okay, so can I, so I just want to say this is completely opposite of what council told us that we were told, and it shocked Joe McDougal and I, both members of Board of Selectmen prior to this, and he was on the Board of Finance. We were told that there is no authority over the Board of Education budget whatsoever. So if there is, because we never ever thought we were line item, that was never part of it. So we were like, oh, well, that'll be a relief to everyone that we no longer, Board of Selectmen no longer have to vote on the Board of Education budget. It just goes to Board of Finance. So that's where the confusion has come about. And I think it would be helpful if we were given the statute under which, when we get these changes back, if you guys could provide the statute under which this falls, and we will ensure that the language is correct. Because that's why it was removed.
And I agree with Joan. I think what we've been doing, some of it's the politics of it gets confused. An administration, someone can run for office and say, one of the things I swear I will never cut the Board of Ed budget. They can run on that, but that's not what's been in the charter. And it's also not been the practice of the town. If we're going to change it, that we should talk about it, but that's what always has been the practice. You can't confuse politics with practicality of what we've been what our practices.
Yep, Madam Chair, if I may, just two things. First of all, I want to make sure. So Joan, the section that talks about the aggregate budget, council who advised you on the charter revision had no issue with that, correct?
Council told us to remove Board of Ed. Board of Selectmen should not be voting on Board of Ed budgets. Only the Board of Finance, since we do have a Board of Finance. And seriously, it hits, I remember it distinctly because we were all like, really? Okay. And I think I even texted some people on the Board of Selectmen saying, you no longer have to worry about Board of Ed budgets at the time, because we were all, we were in the midst, I think, of reviewing budgets too. So we're just going through what was presented to us that we always understood. And I think we were trying to clarify that it was going to be aggregate. And then we were told it shouldn't be in there at all. It doesn't matter to the charter, to commission. We just want to make it clear what the responsibilities are of both groups.
So it sounds like we just need clarity on the statute. So, and we'll do some homework. I think we should move on.
So I just want to go on record. I think the difference is between the Board of Selectmen reviewing the proposed budget of the Board of Ed and making a recommendation, and having a say in what is ultimately adopted by the Board of Finance. I think those are two different things. Again, the Board of Finance doesn't have to accept your recommendations,
Right, it doesn't have to.
but I go back to that subsection E. And maybe the clarifying thing to make a note of is including the aggregate budget of the Board of Education and put that back in. But we'll look into
that.
But it's
And we-
recommendations, not voting to cut it before it goes to Board of Finance.
Well, that's what we've been doing all along. I mean, we've had the right to do it. I haven't been doing it.
Well,
We might have-
that's, so
the
is
point
it a
is,
recommendation or is it a, here's what we're presenting as Board of Selectmen to the Board of Finance, an already cut budget? And that's the differential. Does the
but
Board of
Joan-
Finance cut or does the Board of Selectmen cut?
Joan, it's only a recommendation from the Board of Selectmen.
exactly.
So, but we can recommend a cut. And we can go and talk to, I'm sure Carrie can find out if it's we've been breaking the law or not, but I think what's said here is what we've been practicing, been doing.
Well, that's the point is that the recommendation is one thing. When you're voting on it, you're saying, okay, this is the Board of Selectmen approved, and you're already telling the Board of Education that the cut has happened.
No,
And then the
no.
Board of Finance would then have to restore the cut if it was going to go back to what the recommended Board of Ed budget is. And I think there needs to be that recommendation versus, I think, Bruce, you had said, we're just voting to move it forward to the Board of Finance. We're not approving it. So there's, you know what I mean? There's an art term here.
Well, maybe it's how the board votes on it in the future. I think we had this talk when this came up, is should the motion for the Board of Education budget is the Board of Selectmen is making a recommendation, whereas the town budget we are approving.
So I think to Scott's point, let's find out what the statute allows. That outcome uncertain, I'm content to leave the Board of Education reference removed from the powers of the Board of Selectmen, because it gets picked up by the Board of Finance, and they are the budget authority, so it's, and if it's simply we're endorsing a budget, I'm not sure what value that adds to the process, other than it forces the Board of Ed to present to another group.
Bruce, the endorsement thing is a political statement by some administration. It has nothing to do with the rules. There's no endorsement. Whether or not it's a recommendation or not, we should find out. We definitely should find out what the answer is. I'm just going by past practices.
And I would agree with that, but I have to say, I feel like subsection E, where all it talks about is recommending something to the Board of Finance, which is not authoritative, it is not binding. I don't see that as being problematic, but.
So we should not be, just so I understand though, we are not approving a budget either then, the board.
Right.
We're only recommending.
Exactly. If you read subsection E.
We term it as approved by the Board of Selectmen.
we've been using that
So
language.
we need to kind of make sure that in the future we don't use that language. It's really the recommended budget of the Board of Selectmen, not the approved budget of the Board of Selectmen.
And subsection E basically says that. I mean, I don't know how to be clearer.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's just something I think moving forward, if this passes, we have to be careful about our motions and our nomenclature, I guess.
And to
Right.
Noreen's point, to the extent it's a political statement, you make a recommendation to the Board of Finance and they disagree with you,
Yeah.
then that's on them, right? Right? But it doesn't take away from your role as the executive branch to make your own recommendations. And that's how I read E. It's not saying that you're making the decision. It's simply saying you are responsible for compiling, for gathering, right? Reviewing, and then making a recommendation. But ultimately, then the next section will apply as to how the budget finally gets put together.
But I'm totally fine with what you just said, Carrie. I'm totally fine with what you read and the recommendation. I just want to make sure the Board of Selectmen has a role here and doesn't lose that role that they've had, unless it's illegal, and we should find out.
I'll talk to Ira, because I disagree that you don't have a right to review it and make recommendations. I don't think there's anything illegal about that at all. But I'll double check with Ira on that.
Okay, thanks.
And and it may have been, I mean, we always voted approvals at the time, so maybe that's where the specifications can be corrected.
Right, vote to approve versus vote to recommend.
Correct.
Right,
Nomenclature.
right, yeah.
Nomenclature, it's
Yeah.
it's a bugger.
Sure is.
Okay, well, it does, it has different meanings, obviously, so, I guess now, so we've obviously opened it up to Board of Finance and Charter. Is there any other Board of Finance comments on the, proposed amendments, including the Board of Selectmen's proposed amendments? Yes,
Fillmore, we're looking at
Justin.
you.
I think Justin has his hand
haven't been
raised.
covered already.
Justin doesn't have a virtual hand, but he's raising his real hand, so go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, no, so I guess, I'm sorry, there's a lot of talk there, but so that paragraph E, are we leaving it as is with Board of Education removed, or are we possibly, I guess after doing some more research, going to make it more clear? Because my personal, as a Board of Finance member, I would rather it be that the Board of Selectmen does have the onus, that they can't just say, oh, well, you know, the Board of Finance is going to approve it. I think the onus, the burden should be on the Board of Selectmen to be the first review and recommendation of a proposed budget for both the town and the Board of Ed.
So I think that she's just gonna talk about the legality of that, and the suggestion was the language says, including the aggregate budget of the Board of Education. If you're gonna insert the language back, it would include the words aggregate budget of the Board of Education.
There's thumbs up from Fillmore, by the way.
Yeah, so, and then if for some reason we can't have it in there from a legal standpoint, then we would just strike it based on the recommendation of Carrie with Ira. Okay?
So let's just finish. Does Justin still have other comments?
Justin, anything else?
Let him finish.
Okay.
So just to put a slightly different perspective on it, the selectmen would then be making a judgment on the bottom line number of the budget. It's too high, it's too low.
Correct.
Right?
Which I always thought we always did.
We can't dip into the line item composition of it. And deciding that the number is too much or too little is the fiscal role, is a budget role. And that is specifically the Board of Finance. So if we start saying this budget is too much or too little, or just right, are we usurping a?
No, but I think if we're making a recommendation versus approving it, we're recommending to the Board of Finance, this maybe feels a little too low, feels a little too high.
I mean, think about it from a,
I think it's what we do.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. To me, where this plays out is when the Board of Ed comes to you in a given year and wants a multitude increase in their budget, percentage points, you know, something that equates to 10% or 12% or whatever, right? And the idea is that the Board of Ed comes before you, and as I think I've heard, it's usually a joint meeting. They present their budget, they present the reasons for increases, if necessary. And, you know, if you all in your infinite wisdom say, geez, you know, a 10% increase, that's way above, you know, what the costs, you know, have, you know, this is a bad time to talk about that because of everything that's going on with inflation. But you understand what I'm saying. If you think a 3% increase is appropriate as opposed to a 10%, what this section allows you to do is say, Board of Finance, we think Board of Ed can make do with 3% instead of 10%. And I'm just going to tell you, in my experience, that's always been in the hands of, you know, the Board of Selectmen or the town council, to at least initially make that assessment, if you will. And ultimately, you could be wrong. And the Board of Finance might disagree with you, and they might, you know, just go ahead and give what they want.
Make up for it. Fillmore has never told us we were wrong, ever.
I'm just saying, I have never been in a situation, and I will double check with Ira, but I've never been in a situation where the executive branch didn't at least have an opportunity to say, geez, that seems high. You know, I don't think it should be 10%. I think it should be 8 or 7 or 6 or 5. You know,
I
just
think you are,
But I think that, I think it sounds like the consensus is that we're comfortable putting the language back in as long as it delineates it as the aggregate budget. But if, to Joan's point, if there is a legal reason it shouldn't be in this part under our responsibilities, then anyway, we have a choice, right? So I think we're okay on that. Are there any other issues from Board of Finance members that you wanted to talk about in this, the yellow markup? I think we've talked about, I know Fillmore had raised some issues earlier that I hopefully were addressed. There hasn't really been any changes in authority. Okay, so I think with that, then the question for the Board of Selectmen is, do we want to, what do we want to do here? Do we want to
Stick a pin in that last item, when we get a resolution on that, I think we're prepared to move it forward back to the CRC.
And we could do a special meeting if we had to vote it.
Yeah, okay, so we could just do a Zoom special meeting to vote it. So that would be, we have that outstanding issue. There was something raised at the meeting about the disposition of town real property. We had an outstanding issue. We need an answer for that, right?
I put changes in blue highlight here that came from Fillmore's suggestion during the public hearing.
Okay, so this is under purchase of real estate. The purchase of real estate.
So we need input from
Carrie. Well, I think Carrie would. So there were some comments at the public hearing, Carrie, on the purchase of real estate, clarifying the language. That it was unclear what happens if it's over $250,000. So this just clarifies what our process would be. And so that was added to item D and blue that's on the screen.
Mhm.
And that makes sense, right? It's just basically clarifying what happens over. And then it just it does the same thing for E as well, for the acceptance of real estate. So that I would assume would be the whole amendment. And then there was something else that I had on here, the $5,000 versus the $10,000 thing. That was looking at state statute, Carrie. I don't know if you had a chance to get an answer on that, where disposition of town-owned real property. And I think you said that the state statute requires $10,000 now. But
so the state statute exempts you from having to go to public meeting and jump through a lot of hoops at 10,000.
Okay.
And so I just, to me, it just seemed like 5,000 is a very low threshold to force you to a town meeting. But again, at the end of the day, the decision is yours.
Oh, okay, so this actually reflects that, I'm just realizing now. So you found out that it's 10,000 and we just refer to state statute. I think we were comfortable with that. We agreed with that. So, yeah, we'd rather do that versus having some fixed dollar amounts. So, yeah. So I think we're good on that. That was what the board had wanted. Anything else?
What I'm looking at, is that crossed out? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble seeing.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yeah, you
all right, I caught it. All right,
yeah,
good.
Fine.
Yeah, you're good.
Mhm.
And I think that was the only other thing that the public hearing, there was some discussion that we just answered some questions on the Board of Finance, just conferring with us. But the approval authority lays with the Board of Finance. And that's it, I think. So if we just get that one thing on the Board of Ed budget clarified.
I will reach out to Ira and ask him to call me tomorrow, and I'll let you know, Peggy, what I hear.
Okay, and we'll try to do a quick, special meeting to do a final vote to send this back to the Charter Review Commission. And then, and I don't know if there's any, I know Joan is here, I know Liz was going to, they're tentatively thinking of meeting the week of July 10th. So the week after next, to them our changes, and then there'll be an opportunity for people to weigh in directly with the Charter Review Commission again, if you want to like roll this over. Yeah, it'll be that week. They have to schedule their own meeting, so we don't.
We have to send it to them.
Right, so we need to vote this week though, or send it. So we will vote this week. Once we get a resolution from Carrie, we'll do a special meeting and do a vote. Okay, Maureen, did you have something else before we close this item?
Yes, I just wanted to, I just wanted to go back to one thing, and I apologize to Carrie because I've been driving her crazy with this one thing, but back to the specific powers of the Board of Selectmen. Can we discuss that for a minute? Town employees, I just want to know by what we have there. This is the Board of Selectmen. Could a member of the Board of Selectmen be involved by asking for a job description, or do we have to wait until it's on the agenda and we get the background information? I just don't want the Board of Selectmen giving up any power. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right now, I've been told more than I ever have in my life to stay in my lane. I want to know what my lane is here.
So vis-a-vis employees?
Yeah, then talking about town employees.
So again, my advice, Noreen, to not just you, but to every member of the Board of Selectmen is when an employee comes to you and is upset about what's transpiring, the first knee-jerk response should be to send them to HR. I know you've got a new director coming in and you want to be consistent. That's number one, Noreen, because otherwise you're going to be in a situation where each of you is potentially going to be approached by people who feel close to you. Then there's going to be claims of disparate treatment, of potentially violating contracts or collective bargaining agreements. I just cannot. I am not your labor and employment attorney, and you might want to speak to them directly. But I cannot stress enough that my knee jerk on employment matters is to send them to the powers that be. And I would say to you, Noreen, again, as a caveat, if an employee is either the HR department or feels that they haven't had satisfaction through the HR department, then I think where things kick in is with what's going to be proposed, which is the Board of Selectmen policy regarding extraneous due process for employees who are dissatisfied with HR. That's what I heard when we all met together that night, that you were going to create a policy that gave greater due process or clear guidelines as to how employee complaints were going to be addressed by the Board of Selectmen. And if I am wrong, anybody please speak up.
Carrie, I think that's good information. Thank you, but it really wasn't what I was saying. But anyway, it's good information, especially obviously this year we had an issue and we had no one to go to. That was the biggest problem. But anyway.
But so Noreen, if I wasn't responsive, please tell me, point to.
Well, what I'm talking about is we start to put, the first selectman comes in, they want to reorganize and they put job description, they have job descriptions in their head or new jobs, new placement, whatever it is. Does by number A here, does a member of the Board of Selectmen have a right to ask for a written job description while this is all being pursued? I'm not talking about, because normally what we get is, most things we get right before we vote, as part of the background on the agenda. So I want to make sure, because I don't understand why we couldn't see job descriptions. And that's just one thing. That's not a complaint. That's the part of the process. And I don't know why a member of the Board of Selectmen would not be allowed to ask that.
I don't think that the process that the town has followed has been that job descriptions go to the JDC and then the JDC makes a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And that is the process that has been followed.
So no selectman has ever asked for a job description before I did. I mean, this was actually a job description.
I'm just saying, we did a reorganization a year ago, Noreen, and we followed the exact same process.
Right, well, but the job description, the process a year ago was set at a Zoom meeting.
And you also received the job descriptions when requested.
No, I didn't. I didn't. I was told, I got a letter from one board member saying I wasn't being nice. I was told it wasn't in my lane by another. I mean, I don't want to argue here. I just want to say,
No, but
I want to make sure a Board of Selectmen member should be able, as part of this process, to ask for something as simple as a written, because we were given the job description orally. I just wanted it in writing.
Noreen,
Now-
right now we're trying to focus on the language of the charter though.
Well, that's what-
That is about process and procedures, that the board has policies and processes, and those are all gonna be redone. And it would lay out all of that.
But
Now we're just talking about the charter piece of that, which would not get into that level of minutia.
Well, it does, because we've changed the charter, so supposedly, by putting in this part about the recommendation and about proper, what's the wording here? But anyway, but now we have to have a recommendation from the first selectman in order, and I understand why that's important, don't get me wrong. No one's gonna come up, no selectman's gonna come up with a name and make a motion to put someone in, I get that. But I just think if a selectman's interested enough to ask for general information that's been given to them, but you just want it in writing, why is that not allowed?
Well, let's discuss that as a policy, Noreen. I think that's a fair point, but
That's
let's,
not.
I don't think that's
how
for
we-
charterizing though.
Well, actually, I feel what changes we've made have made that less of a chance. Because we no longer have a part with the first selectman has that right to hire, fire.
Vote against the approval of the position.
Pardon me?
Noreen,
You can vote at it through the budget process, and you can vote at it when you're approving the appointment. You can vote against it.
Noreen, if I may, Madam Chairman, if I may. So my read of this subsection, which says the Board of Selectmen shall approve the appointment, hiring, firing, right? All with the recommendation of the first selectman. Just because the first selectman recommends somebody, ultimately, the Board of Selectmen approves. So in my mind, I read this charter that you're entitled to any information that's maybe, again, within your policies or whatever, you're gonna have to decide what's disclosable with confidentiality stuff. I don't do your labor and employment, but I'm just gonna say, I read this as saying, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the first says, other than that they recommend someone.
I agree with you, and I'm fine with that. I just want to know the process. That's all. In other words, once we pass this budget, and next year I ask for a job description, and not a resume or job description. Am I going to be denied it again?
I can't.
We craft the policy and
Lorraine,
procedure
that is a separate, your take on the situation, and we can have that conversation offline.
Yeah, sure. All right.
You're misrepresenting what happened, and this is the third meeting now. We've had 3 meetings, so this is the 4th, where we've talked about this one specific issue. So let's have a private conversation about it, and not continue to drag this into a charter discussion.
Well, because we're making changes in the charter. That's the only reason I brought it. Look, I brought it up again and again, and you're right. But I've not gotten any responses from just my answer about stay in your lane. Well, I haven't heard from any of the other selectmen where they feel on that. Is that what we're saying here? I want to know what we're giving up. And by reading A, as Carrie read it, we don't look like we're giving up any.
I think the other selectmen all agreed that they were happy with this language, and you did too at the last meeting, so.
You know what? Noel, I just want to make sure, thinking about this, and as I said to Carrie the other day, we don't want to give any power away. When you've got a selectman, whoever future selectman that wants to be active, they should not be denied not decision-making until they're sitting with a board member, or the 5 board members. They have no power other than that. I understand that. But I'll tell you, I've never. Anyway, I brought it up at 3 meetings.
Hang on. So I guess I don't feel like this is giving up power, for one. Nor
Exactly.
I feel like it should be about power. It should be about our appropriate roles and responsibilities as it relates to the charter, not about power. I guess I've never even thought about that relative.
Well, but it's not. First of all, it is duties and responsibilities, and it says right there, 4.1.4, specific powers of the Board of Selectmen. That's why I'm using the word. It's in the charter. But it's a responsibility, as I said to you before, I don't feel I fulfill my responsibility when I can't work with people just to move things forward. I understand my role as one vote, but I mean, it's just, I've just never seen this happen before, but I'm not gonna bring it up. As Peggy's right, I brought it up quite a bit.
Noreen, I just want to say, my read of this charter does not take away any oversight authority that you are legally entitled to as far as hiring, firing, terms of employment. Again, I can't speak to all the labor and employment laws. That's your labor and employment attorney's job. But I am telling you, I do not see this as taking away your oversight. And ultimately, the Board of Selectmen's approval of actions taken vis-a-vis employment matters. And I'm just trying to give you that assurance, Noreen. That's not how I read it.
Can I jump in? Yeah. So the 50,000 foot level, our goal was to, rather than enumerate specifics in this, was to confer on the Board of Selectmen the policy-making oversight. And I see several references in this that we have policy-making oversight that are unrestricted in what they can cover, right? So we can write policies about anything we want to do. And in that sense, I think we remain very real and very appropriate oversight on town governance. So I'm content. Carrie, I'm looking for you to say yes, that my explanation is reflected in the language.
And I think that's what I was trying to relay just a second ago.
Good.
I feel confident. I feel confident, Noreen, that the Board of Selectmen has not given up any oversight ability. And again, whatever policies you create, please make sure they're consistent with your labor and employment attorney's review and advice. But I do not see this charter as taking away any oversight just because we revised the language. The only thing it did was, to the point of a number of the Board of Selectmen, was it said, we recognize that the obligation to vet people in the first instance rests with the first. And we're not going to start getting ourselves, intertwined and, all of that. So
I think.
I do have one point of clarification. One thing that I'm not clear on at the bottom of 4.1.3, without a letter in front of it, it says, as it may find necessary to carry out its duties and responsibilities, it may require such information from or joint meetings or other. It hangs out there as a little bit of a out of context paragraph, and I'm wondering, does it deserve its own letter or does it deserve a little more explanation? Because as I read this for the 100th time, now I'm not sure exactly what it's intended to mean.
So I think the point of that, and again, I didn't draft it, but it's this summary of how you would implement what comes before it, which is your general powers and duties. And all it's saying is, in order to effectuate your ability to exercise these general powers and duties, you have the right to pull in anybody from the town and ask them. It's kind of like your authority to do an investigation for the information you need in order to do that. I don't think you have to have it in there. In fact, it could be a preamble to this section instead of a postscript, right? It could be a preamble.
Can Noreen take faith in her point of if I ask for information, I should have an expectation that I'm going to get it from this language?
And I would say, again, with the one little caveat that there are weird laws that apply to labor and employment and what you are entitled to. Okay. So anything that is available, that is not somehow confidential, by state law, to me, what this says is you're entitled to it.
Okay.
And that's what I've been asking. That's what I've been asking all along.
Right. And I'm just trying to reassure you, Noreen, I do not believe any of the changes we made take away your authority of oversight.
So I think that at this point, this is, like I said, the fourth time I think we've talked about this specific point A. And so with that, I think we were ready to say that we will schedule, once we get a resolution from Carrie about the one outstanding issue, we will set up a special meeting for the board to recommend and go back to the charter revision. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. All right, with that then, I would like to then make a motion to move into executive session. And this is for the public's benefit. Just may I say that the meeting now, public part of the meeting will be ending, and so we'll be going to executive session, and we'll be turning off the camera and not recording this. The executive session, I would like to invite into that Lauren Rhines, Carrie Olson, Jack Drum, and Joe
Shareko.
Traco from North Carolina as well. And I think that was it for the executive session, correct? Okay. With that,
Special thanks to our charter commission
yes,
people and our
thank
board
you
of
for
finance
your
people.
comments and thoughts are appreciated. So with that, can I get a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All right.